The Galactic Federation had always prided itself on its strength. It was an alliance of the galaxy's most advanced species, their civilizations spanning across countless star systems, each contributing something unique to the Great Collective. But now, for the first time in its history, it was facing a threat that it could not control, a force so devastating that it had already wiped out entire star systems, leaving nothing behind but desolation and silence. The Federation's once proud fleets were no match for it. No matter what strategy they employed, no matter how advanced their technologies were, the mysterious invaders, the Eclipse, seemed to anticipate their every move. They adapted. They learned. They destroyed. In the dimly lit war rooms of the Federation's capital, the alien representatives from dozens of different species huddled together in a state of grim realization. They had failed. Their great alliance was crumbling under the weight of the invasion. News from the outermost colonies was the same. Entire planets were disappearing without a trace. Entire fleets sent to fight the Eclipse had simply vanished. Nothing was left but their ghostly transmissions, filled with static, offering no hope. The Council of the Federation was in disarray. The peaceful, diplomatic ideals they had built their foundation on now seemed irrelevant. The Federation's leaders knew there was only one thing left: they could do something they had avoided for decades. They had to call on humanity. The decision was not made lightly. There was history between the Federation and humans, most of it bad. Humans, in the eyes of many of the Federation's more ancient and noble species, were a chaotic, unpredictable race. Their militaristic past, their tendency to solve problems through force rather than diplomacy, made them an uncomfortable presence in the galactic community. Despite this, one thing was undeniable: humans were survivors. Even in their early years of exploration, when they first made contact with the Federation, they had managed to hold their own against far superior species. They had a kind of fire within them, an unyielding drive to fight and adapt. It was this quality that the Federation now found itself desperate for. The message was sent in secret, its contents written with a sense of both desperation and caution. The Federation had long kept their distance from humanity, but now, in their darkest hour, they had no choice but to rely on the one species everyone feared. It was a simple plea: we are facing extinction. The Eclipse is unstoppable. We request your assistance. They knew that no matter how the humans would respond, they could not afford to waste time. Every passing day brought them closer to total annihilation. As the message was sent, it vanished into the cold expanse of space, headed straight for Earth, unsure of what response it would receive. Would humans answer the call? Or would they turn their back on the galactic struggle, as many had hoped for years? On Earth, the news of the Federation's distress signal came as a shock. For years, humanity had focused on its own internal struggles, exploring nearby star systems, but never truly engaging with the greater galactic community. The idea of being involved in such a large-scale conflict was far from the minds of Earth's leaders. Most dismissed the message as either a hoax or a trap. Humanity had always been fiercely independent, with a long history of distrust toward alien civilizations. The idea of joining an interstellar alliance seemed alien to their very nature. But then, as the Federation's message began to make its way through Earth's network of scientists and military leaders, a handful of individuals began to pay attention. One of these was Dr. Emily Pierce, a renowned scientist and former diplomat who had spent years working on interstellar communication. She was one of the few who understood the gravity of the situation. She knew the Federation wouldn't reach out unless they were desperate. Dr. Pierce worked tirelessly, decoding the message, piecing together its meaning and urgency. She couldn't believe what she was reading, but there was no time for doubt. She took the message to the United Nations, to the military leaders, and to the President. The response was hesitant at first. The message was unverified, and the Federation's request seemed far-fetched. But the more they discussed it, the more they realized there was no turning back. The Federation's plea wasn't a joke, it was real. And Earth had the power to change the course of the galaxy's future. General Marcus Hayes, a battle-hardened leader with years of experience in both military strategy and diplomacy, was appointed to lead the Earth's task force. He was skeptical at first. The Federation had always kept their distance, and humanity wasn't prepared to rush into an intergalactic war without understanding the full extent of the threat. But Hayes knew something others didn't. Humans had an advantage. They might not have the most advanced technology, but their creativity, adaptability, and sheer will to survive had carried them through countless struggles. If the Federation needed someone to think outside the box, humans were their only hope. Soon, Earth began preparing for the unknown. Ships were outfitted with the best technology available, but the true secret weapon lay in the human mind. General Hayes worked with his team to develop strategies that defied conventional tactics. They would not simply join the Federation's fight, they would turn the tide. The Eclipse, no matter how powerful, could be defeated by those who refused to play by their rules. But as the fleet prepared to depart, uncertainty loomed large. Were the Federation's allies truly trustworthy? Could they be counted on when the moment of truth arrived? The Federation had already lost so much. Their desperation was obvious, but the humans had yet to prove they were ready to fight beside them. As the countdown to departure began, Dr. Pierce stood alone in her lab, staring at the vast stars above, unsure of what lay ahead. The Federation had placed its faith in humanity, but would that faith be rewarded, or would Earth's involvement mark the beginning of the galaxy's end? No one could say for sure, but one thing was certain: whatever happened, humanity would not back down. They had faced extinction before and survived. The Federation was crumbling, and they had placed their final, desperate hope in the hands of those they once feared, humans. The message was sent. The countdown had begun. Now, it was up to Earth to respond. Would they rise to the challenge, or would they be another casualty in the vast, cold war of the galaxy? It was a quiet night on Earth when the message arrived. At first, no one noticed it. Just another ordinary signal drifting through space, lost in the vast ocean of communication traffic that passed across the stars. But this time, something was different. Hidden within the static, buried under layers of noise, was a clear and unmistakable distress call. The Federation, an alliance of powerful alien species that had long maintained their dominance in the galaxy, had reached out to humanity for help. They were desperate. The entire galaxy, they said, was in danger of being consumed by a force unlike anything they had ever encountered before. The message, when decoded, was simple yet chilling. We are facing extinction. The Eclipse is unstoppable. We request your assistance. Dr. Emily Pierce, a brilliant scientist who had long worked in the field of interstellar communications, was one of the few humans who could understand the true weight of the message. She had always been fascinated by the stars, studying them from a young age. As a child, she had gazed at the night sky and dreamed of the day when humanity would venture beyond its homeworld and explore the endless reaches of space. Her work had always been focused on deciphering the mysterious signals that occasionally reached Earth, some from distant alien civilizations, others from deep space, but none like this. The message was encoded in a way that made it clear this wasn't just some random transmission. It was a call for help, and it was directed at humanity. The moment Dr. Pierce read the message, her heart skipped a beat. The Federation, the very same Federation that had been so careful to avoid any direct involvement with Earth, the same one that had viewed humanity with suspicion, was asking for their help. It didn't make sense. Why would they come to Earth now, after years of keeping their distance? After so many instances where humans had barely even been acknowledged in the larger galactic community? What had changed? Dr. Pierce couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something far larger, far more dangerous than anything humanity had ever faced. She knew, deep down, that this was no ordinary plea. The Federation was truly in trouble. But before she could think further, her instincts kicked in. She had to act fast. The message had to be verified, and it had to be shared with the right people, those in positions of power, those who could make decisions, take action. She immediately contacted her colleagues at the United Nations, sending them the decoded message. It wasn't long before the message was being scrutinized by world leaders, military officials, and top scientists. Everyone was trying to make sense of it, trying to figure out whether it was genuine or some kind of elaborate hoax. But even as they debated, something inside each of them told them this was no joke. The Federation was in trouble, and if their message was to be believed, the entire galaxy was in danger. The President of the United States, along with the leaders of other major nations, convened an emergency meeting. News of the message had spread quickly, and public opinion was already divided. Some believed the Federation's plea was a trap, a clever scheme to lure humanity into a conflict it wasn't prepared for. Others, more cautious, wondered if this was some kind of test and opportunity for Earth to prove its worth to the galaxy. But Dr. Pierce, who had spent years analyzing alien communication patterns, had no doubt in her mind. This was real. The Federation was fighting for survival, and they had no choice but to turn to the one species that had always been known for its resilience, humans. Despite the skepticism, there was a growing sense of urgency. Earth had long been neutral in galactic affairs, but the Federation's message forced the world's leaders to reconsider their position. How could they ignore a request for help from the most powerful alliance in the galaxy? The decision was made to respond, but how? The Federation's message had been clear about one thing: the Eclipse, the enemy that was tearing through the galaxy, was unlike any force they had encountered. There was no way to fully prepare for an enemy whose methods were unknown, whose technology was beyond anything the Federation had ever seen. General Marcus Hayes, a military leader with decades of experience, was called in to help assess the situation. He had seen his fair share of battles and had a reputation for being both calm under pressure and brilliant in strategy. When the President called him in to discuss the Federation's message, Hayes listened carefully. His first instinct was to question the Federation's motives. Why had they waited so long to reach out to humanity? Why now? But even as he thought about it, he realized that the truth didn't matter. If the Federation was telling the truth, then humanity had no choice but to act. If the Federation fell, Earth would be next. The Eclipse would show no mercy. The government scrambled to prepare. Another problem emerged. The Federation's message had not been without consequences. Earth was not the only planet receiving the distress signal. Across the galaxy, there were whispers of the same message being sent to other species. Some were already preparing for war, while others debated whether to get involved at all. There was talk of alliances being forged, of desperate strategies being formed. But none of that mattered now. Humanity had to decide if they were going to answer the call. There would be no turning back once they did. As the days passed, Dr. Pierce continued to work tirelessly, monitoring the transmissions from the Federation. She couldn't shake the feeling that the Eclipse, whatever they were, had already begun their assault on the galaxy's farthest reaches. The Federation, in their wisdom and vast knowledge, had always been able to hold their own. But now they were beaten and bruised, their fleets scattered across the stars. Humanity had the chance to make a difference, to become more than just a small, insignificant species in the galaxy. But the question remained, could humans rise to the occasion? There was no way to know for sure. But the Federation's message, with its raw desperation and fear, had awakened something in the human spirit. It was a call for help, and whether or not humanity was ready, they had to answer. The galaxy was on the edge of destruction, and Earth might just be the last hope. The stakes couldn't be higher, but Dr. Pierce believed one thing above all else: if anyone had a chance to change the course of history, it was humanity. They had always been the wild card, the species that never played by the rules, the species that had survived against all odds. And now, the galaxy would see just how far that spirit could carry them. The message from the stars had been received, and the response was coming. The only question that remained was whether it would be enough. The time had come. After days of debate, preparation, and an overwhelming sense of urgency, humanity's fleet was ready to embark on its journey into the unknown. The Federation's message had been clear, and the leaders of Earth had made their decision. General Marcus Hayes, along with Dr. Emily Pierce and a team of the best military strategists, engineers, and scientists, led the charge. They boarded Earth's flagship vessel, the Resolute, a symbol of their new role in the galaxy. Their destination, Federation space, a place humans had only dreamed of entering. The unknown stretched before them, both thrilling and terrifying. The journey to the heart of the Federation was long and full of uncertainty. As Earth's fleet traveled through the void, Every crew member could feel the weight of what lay ahead. They weren't just venturing into uncharted space, they were entering a battle for survival. The Federation had already fought the Eclipse for what felt like an eternity and had suffered devastating losses. Yet, despite their own advanced technology, they were on the brink of collapse. Their once mighty fleet had been decimated, and their planets were falling. Humanity was now the last hope. When the fleet finally arrived in Federation space, the sight that met their eyes was unlike anything anyone had imagined. Dozens of alien ships, some elegant and others massive and intimidating, floated in a spaceport that seemed more like a graveyard. Ships lay in ruins, their hulls scorched, their once pristine designs marred by the horrors of war. The Federation's once glorious capital, a beautiful planet with vast cities and lush landscapes, was now a shadow of its former self. Smoke rose from the surface, and dark clouds covered the sky like a suffocating blanket. The humans, for the first time, saw the scale of the destruction. They were standing at the edge of the galaxy's most advanced civilization, watching it slowly crumble. The cold reality set in. This wasn't just some distant conflict. The fate of the galaxy rested in their hands. As the Resolute approached the Federation's command center, the atmosphere grew tense. The humans knew the Federation species had always viewed them with suspicion, perhaps even disdain. Their unorthodox ways, their chaotic nature, and their unpredictable tendencies made them an uneasy presence in the galaxy. Now, standing at the forefront of the Federation's desperate attempt to survive, humanity had to prove they were more than just a chaotic force. They had to show they could be the galaxy's savior. General Hayes led a delegation to meet with the Federation's leaders. They were greeted by a mixture of cold stares and wary glances. The Federation species, whose members had never truly understood humans, found themselves uncertain. They had no choice but to accept the human alliance, but trust was something that would take time if it ever came at all. The humans were unfamiliar territory, and the Federation's leaders had no idea if they would be able to trust them in battle. The meeting was brief and to the point. The Federation's council laid out the situation clearly. The Eclipse had already taken countless star systems, their forces were expanding, and nothing seemed to stop them. Their technology was superior, and their tactics were ruthless. No one knew much about them, just that they were relentless and unstoppable. The only thing that seemed to slow them down was a warship the humans had never seen before, a strange vessel. Unlike anything the Federation had in their fleet. It was here that humanity's first taste of the Eclipse came. The Federation commanders shared the intelligence they had gathered, but the image of the Eclipse's ships, black as night and sleek like shadows, sent a chill through everyone in the room. They were efficient, precise, and merciless. Their ships were silent killers, striking from the dark without warning, and they had the uncanny ability to adapt quickly to any resistance. Humanity was facing something entirely new, and no one knew what would happen when they finally crossed paths with the Eclipse. But despite the fear, the humans refused to back down. General Hayes, standing firm in front of the Federation leaders, spoke with a confidence that surprised even himself. "We are here because we don't know how to lose. We'll find a way to fight back, and we'll do it together." The Federation listened, still unsure but desperate for any sign of hope. They were running out of options, and they knew that if humanity failed, they would have nothing left to hold on to. For the first time in their lives, they looked at the humans as something more than an unpredictable species. They looked at them as equals in the fight for survival. The humans spent the next few days working alongside the Federation's military engineers, technicians, and strategists. There was a strange sort of unity between the two forces, despite their vast differences. The humans brought their boldness and unpredictability to the table, while the Federation offered their advanced knowledge of space warfare. Together, they began to formulate a plan, though it was one built on uncertainty. No one knew for sure what would happen when the Eclipse arrived again. All they had were their instincts and the desperate hope that it would be enough. Then, just as the humans thought they might get a moment to catch their breath, the Federation's scouts reported something alarming. The Eclipse were on the move again, their forces advancing toward Federation space at an alarming speed. The battle was coming, and it was coming soon. General Hayes called an emergency meeting with the Federation's top commanders. He had a plan, though it was risky, perhaps even insane. But there was no time left for hesitation. If they didn't act now, they would lose everything. The Federation leaders were divided. Some agreed, others doubted, and some feared that humanity's approach, though bold, would only make matters worse. But the sense of desperation was undeniable. Every day, the eclipse grew stronger, their presence expanding like a dark cloud consuming everything in its path. The humans were their last hope, and now they had no choice but to trust them. The humans prepared for the coming battle. They could feel the tension rising. The Federation's forces had been battered, but they were ready to fight. The humans had come here not to be passive observers, but to take charge. Their fleet was not large, but their resolve was strong. The Federation's ships might have superior technology, but the humans had something else, something more dangerous to the Eclipse. They had ingenuity. They had creativity. And they had something no other species had, a burning will to survive at any cost. The humans may have been outsiders to the galaxy, but they were about to prove that their way was the one that could win this war. The first contact with the Federation had not just been about meeting allies, it was about learning how to fight for the future of the entire galaxy. But would it be enough? Would humanity's unpredictable nature, their ability to adapt and surprise, be the key to turning the tide against the unstoppable force that was the Eclipse? Only time would tell. The humans set their sights on the upcoming battle. They knew one thing for sure: the galaxy was no longer the same place. Humanity had crossed a line, and there was no turning back now. The Eclipse were coming, and the humans were ready to show them what it meant to be feared. The first contact had been made, and humanity's place in the galaxy would never be the same again. The silence of space was broken only by the low hum of the Resolute's engines. General Marcus Hayes stared out of the observation window, watching the stars streak past as Earth's fleet moved closer to the heart of Federation territory. The gravity of the situation was sinking in. This was no longer just about survival. It was about proving that humanity had a place in this galaxy, a place among the stars. As Earth's fleet prepared for the upcoming battle, the tension was palpable, both in the Federation and on human ships. The Federation's commanders were all too aware that their forces had been decimated, their fleets scattered and worn down by the relentless attacks of the Eclipse. Humanity's forces, though smaller, were more agile and brimming with untapped potential. They didn't have the Federation's advanced technologies, but they had something else: the human spirit. On the bridge of the Resolute, Dr. Emily Pierce stood beside General Hayes, observing the galaxy's first coordinated response to the Eclipse. The human forces had been integrated into the Federation's strategy, but it was clear from the beginning that the Federation's traditional methods of warfare weren't going to work against this unknown enemy. The Eclipse didn't fight like anyone the Federation had ever encountered. They were silent, efficient, and fast. There was no room for hesitation, no time for complex strategies. The battle would be brutal, and every move would count. Dr. Pierce looked over at General Hayes, who'd been working tirelessly to integrate human tactics with the Federation's. The Federation had long prided itself on its disciplined, organized approach to war. Its fleets moved like clockwork, a well-oiled machine that left little room for improvisation. But Hayes and his team knew that the Eclipse were something different. The Federation's way isn't going to be enough, General Hayes said quietly, his voice tinged with both certainty and concern. We need to do this differently. We can't play by their rules. We need to hit them where it hurts, fast and without warning. Dr. Pierce nodded. She had been working closely with military strategists, studying the data the Federation had collected on the Eclipse. It was clear that traditional military tactics wouldn't work. The Eclipse adapted too quickly, and their ships were designed to be nearly invisible, striking without warning, disappearing into the darkness of space before the enemy could retaliate. Humanity, however, had one thing that could turn the tide: their willingness to think outside the box. While the Federation's commanders focused on conventional strategies, the humans were working on something different, something that might surprise the Eclipse. The Federation's leaders were skeptical at first, but the urgency of the situation forced them to accept the humans' unconventional methods. With no time left to waste, General Hayes ordered a series of daring reconnaissance missions that would take their ships deep into Eclipse-controlled space, hoping to gather more information about their enemy's weaknesses. It was risky, but the humans had never been afraid of risk. The first few missions were tense. Every time they ventured into Eclipse territory, they risked discovery. But slowly, the humans learned to move like shadows, using their small, agile ships to avoid detection. They learned how to outmaneuver the Eclipse's fleet, exploiting gaps in their defenses and gathering vital intelligence on their enemies. It became clear that the Eclipse, despite their advanced technology, were not invincible. They had weaknesses. They relied too heavily on their stealth, and they underestimated their opponent's ability to adapt and learn. The humans, with their ability to think quickly and improvise, began to develop new tactics that the Eclipse could not predict. The Federation was still skeptical, but they couldn't deny the results. Human forces were learning to fight the Eclipse in ways the Federation never thought possible. In the heart of Federation space, preparations were underway for the first major offensive. The humans and Federation forces would work together to launch a surprise attack on one of the Eclipse's key strongholds. The plan was simple: strike quickly, hit them where it hurts, and get out before the Eclipse could react. It wasn't a large-scale invasion. It was a fast, surgical strike designed to send a message. The Federation commanders had their doubts, but the human approach was clear. They would use speed, chaos, and unpredictability to catch the Eclipse off guard. The operation began in the dead of night, with ships slipping quietly through the shadows of space, using the dark void to their advantage. As the first wave of human ships approached the Eclipse stronghold, General Hayes gave the order, "Hit them now." The human ships burst from the darkness, launching a rapid, unpredictable assault on the Eclipse's defenses. The Federation fleet followed suit, but it was the human ships that led the charge, darting in and out of the Eclipse's range, attacking from unexpected angles. It was a complete departure from the Federation's usual tactics, but it worked. For the first time, the Eclipse were caught off guard. Their ships tried to adapt, to strike back, but the humans were too fast, too unpredictable. They created chaos, forcing the Eclipse to react to them instead of the other way around. The human way, wild, unpredictable, and relentless, was a force the Eclipse had never encountered. As the battle raged on, the Eclipse struggled to maintain control. Their ships, once invisible and elusive, were now being struck from all directions. The Federation's ships, though less agile, added their weight to the attack, pushing the Eclipse back and forcing them to retreat. It was a hard-fought victory, but a victory nonetheless. The first major success in the war against the Eclipse came not through brute force, but through the human ability to adapt, to surprise, and to fight in ways their enemies never saw coming. General Hayes stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the aftermath of the battle unfold on the screens. He felt a sense of pride. Humans had proven their worth. They had not only helped the Federation, but they had also changed the course of the war. The Eclipse had been forced to rethink their tactics, something they had never had to do before. It was a small victory in the grand scheme of things, but it was a significant one. The humans and Federation forces regrouped. There was a newfound respect between the two. The battle was far from over, but humanity had shown that it could stand alongside the Federation as equals. They had proven that their way of fighting, often dismissed as reckless, was a force to be reckoned with. The war against the Eclipse was far from won, but humanity's place in the galaxy had been firmly established. And as General Hayes watched the stars once again, he knew one thing for sure: the galaxy had underestimated humans. Now, they were going to learn what it meant to fight like one. The war had raged for what felt like an eternity, and yet, despite all the bloodshed and sacrifices, the end was nowhere in sight. The Eclipse had proven to be an enemy unlike any other, ruthless, efficient, and capable of turning the tides of battle in the blink of an eye. For every victory humanity and the Federation had earned, it felt as though the Eclipse were always one step ahead, adapting, evolving, and countering their every move. But now, as General Marcus Hayes stood on the bridge of the Resolute, he could feel it. The final push was coming. The Eclipse were not just an enemy. They had become a shadow that hung over the galaxy, threatening to consume everything in its path. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, but now it was time to prove that it belonged here, ready to take the fight to the very heart of the Eclipse Empire. The Federation, once fractured and uncertain, had found new resolve in humanity's tactics. The human approach, chaotic, unpredictable, and swift, had been the spark that reignited the Federation's fighting spirit. Now, for the first time, the forces of both species were unified in a common goal: to end the war, to push the Eclipse back, and to reclaim the galaxy for its rightful inhabitants. The final battle would be fought in the heart of Eclipse territory, a place where their fleet was strongest, where their defenses were most formidable. The risk was monumental, but there was no other choice. If they waited any longer, the Eclipse would only grow stronger, and it would become too late to stop them. In the days leading up to the final assault, the human and Federation forces trained together, rehearsing every move, every strategy, refining their tactics. The Federation's massive warships, powerful but slow, would be the spearhead of the attack. The humans would provide the agility, darting in and out of battle, striking fast and hard, keeping the Eclipse off balance. The Federation had learned to trust the human way, and now it was time for them to rely on each other completely. General Hayes, despite the weight of command pressing down on him, felt a strange sense of confidence. The human forces had fought beside the Federation through countless skirmishes, and they had proven themselves time and time again. But this would be their greatest test. Dr. Emily Pierce, standing beside Hayes on the bridge, watched the strategy unfold. Their forces were divided into three main groups: the vanguard, which would initiate the attack and engage the Eclipse head-on; the flank, which would move in from the sides to disrupt any reinforcements; and the shadows, a small but highly skilled group of human ships that would slip through the Eclipse defenses and sabotage their command centers from within. The goal was simple: cripple the Eclipse fleet's coordination and cut off their ability to retaliate. But the challenge was immense. No one knew exactly what they would face when they reached the heart of the Eclipse Empire, but one thing was certain: the Eclipse would fight back with everything they had. As the fleets assembled, ready to launch the final push, there was a moment of eerie silence. It was a feeling all too familiar to the humans, the calm before the storm. For General Hayes, this was the moment that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. If they succeeded, they would secure their place among the stars. If they failed, there would be nothing left but ashes. He glanced at the faces around him, each one filled with a mixture of determination and fear. They were all aware of what was at stake, but there was no room for fear now. The time for doubt was over. The countdown began. The Resolute and the rest of the human ships moved into position, the Federation fleet falling in behind them. A final message was sent to the Federation commanders: this is the last push. Make it count. The ships moved toward the heart of Eclipse territory, the distance closing rapidly. General Hayes stood tall, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of everything they had fought for. This is it. We don't stop until we've won. For Earth, for the Federation, for everyone who's fought and died to get us here. Today, we make history. The battle began without Eclipse's central command. The Eclipse were relentless, but for the first time, they were reacting, not controlling the fight. The flank, moving in from the sides, quickly found themselves engaged in a fierce battle as the Eclipse tried to seal off their reinforcements. Yet, the human ships, using their agility and speed, outmaneuvered the enemy, striking from unexpected angles, creating chaos within the Eclipse ranks. The Shadows, a small but deadly force, infiltrated the heart of Eclipse territory, sneaking past their defenses and disabling key command centers, further crippling their ability to coordinate. The battle raged on, but the momentum was shifting. But just when it seemed like victory was within reach, the Eclipse revealed their trump card. Out of the depths of their space, a massive new ship, larger and more advanced than anything humanity or the Federation had ever seen, emerged. It was the Eclipse's flagship, a vessel that had been hidden away, waiting for the final moment. Its black hull gleamed in the starlight, and it moved with terrifying speed. The ship unleashed a barrage of firepower unlike anything humanity had ever faced. In an instant, the battlefield was flooded with energy blasts that tore through both Federation and human ships alike. The sudden onslaught left the vanguard in disarray, and for a moment, it seemed as though the tide had turned in favor of the Eclipse. General Hayes watched in horror as the battle shifted. "Don't stop. Hold the line," he shouted into the comms. His voice was a lifeline, a reminder to his forces that they couldn't falter now. In the face of overwhelming odds, humanity had always found a way to fight back. This time would be no different. With the Eclipse flagship now in play, the human ships took a bold gamble. Using the very chaos they had created, they drew the enemy flagship into a trap. The human ships, aided by Federation warships, used the shadows of nearby asteroid fields to their advantage, forcing the Eclipse flagship to chase them into a narrow, confined space. It was risky, but it was the only way. The human ships unleashed a devastating barrage of missiles and plasma fire, targeting the weak points of the flagship. The battle was fierce, but the Eclipse flagship began to falter, its energy shields buckling under the sustained assault. And then, with a single, well-placed shot from the Resolute, the Eclipse flagship exploded in a fiery blast that rocked the battlefield. The Eclipse forces, stunned and disorganized, began to retreat, their once feared fleet falling apart in disarray. The final push had succeeded. The Eclipse had been defeated. Humanity and the Federation had, together, reclaimed the galaxy. As the smoke cleared, General Hayes stood on the bridge of the Resolute, watching the debris of the Eclipse fleet drifting in space. The victory had come at a great cost, but the war was over. Humanity had proven itself not just as an ally, but as a force capable of changing the course of galactic history. The final push was complete, and the galaxy had been saved thanks to the human way.